Alright everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the Cult of Larry Draft League. This is the Pokemon Legends Arceus tiering video. Part 2. Part 1 came out last week and we'll get this part out to you now. I'm Dr. Geo, with me is...
P McGee.
And we're gonna not spend too much time on this. As of when this video comes out, there's less than 2 weeks before Season 1 and we're really hoping to get these Mons into the game. We have them tiered up of where they should be based on what moves they have available to them in PLA, and you know, things could always be shooken up if they're added to home before release. Unlikely,
Yep.
but it could. If you want to
Keep an
know,
eye out.
yeah, if you want to know a little more about our tiering philosophy, just go back to part 1 and check that out. You can find a link to our Discord in the description. You can find a link to part 1 in the description, among other things. Anything you want to add, Mr. McGee?
No, I think you hit it all. We went through the less exciting ones last video, and we are going to talk about what I believe are going to be the much more exciting new additions in this video.
Wonderful. Let's get to it.
hmm
First off, we have Kleavor, with the abilities Swarm, Sheer Force, and Steadfast. This is a pretty neat mon. It's got a cool typing, in my opinion. Bug and
hmm
Rock. Like, who's our other big Bug and Rock Pokemon? Crustle?
You have to, yeah, you have to go all the way down pretty much to Crustle.
So this has a little more viability than that. It has a decent speed tier in terms of, like, it's not slow like Scissor, but it's not fast like Scyther.
Yeah, 85 is workable. That's a really good Scarf tier, and it's not the case right now, but this thing is inevitably going to get U-turn at some point in the future. So it'll be a really good Scarf pivoter when that finally kicks into gear.
Yes. We'll see if it can make use of any Sheer Force sets. Like, it has Rock
Yeah,
Slide and
that's it for
right
sure.
now,
Force.
yeah, but I mean, it's Stab Rock Slide. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to stick a Life Orb on it, like if you're U-turning in and out. It's a little dubious, but right
it's
now,
still a good ability. Like Rock Slide is still better than Stone Edge with Sheer Force. It has a higher hit rate. It has a higher damage output thanks to Sheer Force. So Rock Slide's still the way you want to go move-wise. It's just double stacking that with Life Orb is a little difficult.
yeah, like there's no better ability, but it just means you get another item, probably a Scarf. You could go for banded sets depending on what type of speed tiers the game's in. I like the Sash Lead idea you came up with, and some of the other in the community. That's pretty nice with Swords Dance. Um,
Yeah,
it has Stealth Rock,
it's got
which
rocks
is
to work with. Yeah, I mean it's kind of similar to Lycanroc. Lycanroc's obviously better because it has a better speed tier and Endeavor.
and
But
Excel Rock.
yeah, I mean this has Quick Attack, so it has some priority to work with. But Quick Attack isn't that exciting.
I mean, Excel
Um,
Rock is nice just because it's
yeah.
stab boosted.
Yeah, and the big thing here, I guess, to close out Kleavor is that it does get close combat, which is a really nice addition to this evolutionary line. They've normally been working with superpower, which is fine for like a one-off hit, but if you can't break the steel with that hit, you just can't break the steel at all. So something like Corviknight can usually wall out, but close combat's a little nicer just because it's much more spammable,
Yes.
especially if you're running Scarf Kleavors, then close combat's really abusable.
And that should help the other evolutions because you'd assume they're going to get it too once everything gets
Yeah,
integrated. But
yeah,
they
so that'll
have
be nice
not,
for them all.
so I
Yeah.
mean, all both the Scissor and Scyther are going to love it. But okay, let's moving on. Next we have Hisuian Braviary, and this is a cool little image here. It's not the sprite, but you know, I dig it.
Yeah.
This is a Psychic Flying, which is another cool typing, I think, and I like that it's an offensive based version because, like, what are our other two? Zatu and Sigilyph. Uh,
Sigilif, yeah.
yeah, so this is one I was pretty low on until the community was talking about it, and Sheer Force, okay, you know, it's got some nice utility here, as a special breaker. Like,
Yeah.
it's a
I
bit
mean, that's the nice thing about Sheer Force because we were just talking about that with Kleavor. Kleavor lacks the moves to abuse with Sheer Force, but special attackers just have more to work with because a lot of special attacking moves have secondary effects. So both of its stab options in Hurricane and Psychic get that. And then it gets that super necessary coverage with Mystical Fire to pressure
Yes,
steals.
which is absolutely needed. If not, you could just throw in any old steel that, and other than maybe Fortress, and you'd be totally fine. So, like, 65 is a great Scarf tier if you want to use it. I think anything 60 and above is a good Scarf tier because then you can always get past the 110s. You could always do some bulky wall breaker. I mean, this mon's pretty straightforward in how you're going to use it. Like, its defenses are meh, HP stats great. So it'll take a hit or two before it goes down. The question is, does the Hurricane hit or not?
Yep. I mean, you do have Air Slash to work with. That also gets the bonus thanks to the 30% flint rate, so you do get the sheer force boost from that. But Hurricane's the real breaking move.
Yeah, like you can even run both, and it just depends. If you know they're going to switch out, hit Hurricane, but if you need the more guaranteed damage, Air Slash is your move.
Yep. I mean, it's got some really killer damage output. I think it was Shark that looked at its calc for like Slowking, like 252 HP, 252 special defense of nature. Slowking still can't reliably get out of 2 KO range from Hurricane from a Braviary. So it's really quite potent at being a wall breaker if you can pivot well to get it in. Obviously, it struggles with Stealth Rocks, which is something the Nidos don't have an issue with, which is what makes them really good as like the premier sheer force abusers in the meta, just because they're not getting pressured by the rocks. So it has to deal with that as a flying type, but it's manageable if you build around it the right way, and it can really pressure on getting it in front of some of the defensive pieces.
Right, and you know, 112 is very high special attack for a sheer force, where you can run boots. You don't necessarily need a life orb. Like, it's like a Nidoqueen. Like, you know, Nidoqueen does plenty of damage and doesn't always use the life orb.
No, it runs Black Sludge all the time. And Nidoking's special attack is only an 85 for context here. Like, it really has a high special attack stat compared to the Nidos. So it's well enabled to pressure hard.
So we put it at 9 points, which is a pretty fair place to be for it, I feel. Next we have Enamorus-Therian, and this one's not as exciting as the Incarnate form. It has the ability Overcoat, which is kind of resident sleeper. Its stats are pretty good if you ignore the speed tier. So it'll come in, take a hit, you'll get another hit off, and it'll hurt. It will hurt. It has Moonblast. I don't think it has any good flying type moves. As a true genie should.
Outside of outside of Tornadus, they just don't have that coverage, which is fine. I mean, they're all pretty effective without it.
Yeah, so I mean, you're gonna run it bulky because you're never gonna outspeed anything. You can throw a Scarf on it, and you're still not gonna outspeed anything.
I think you can catch base 80s or something like that with Scarf.
That's
but, like,
not worth it, in my opinion.
It's not worth it. Yeah.
Like, never say never. I'm sure there will be a matchup eventually where, like, that's actually a good set. I mean, I'd be much more akin if you're going to choice lock it, just throw a band or a specs on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think this will do okay on the right kind of team. Obviously, you don't get the defog with the flying type, which is rough. You don't get the aromatherapy with the fairy type, which can be tough. So it's a little difficult to build around. But put it in front of, using it as a wall breaker is pretty solid because it's almost impossible to switch in on. And it has the bulk to take the attack from whatever switches in on it afterwards. So it can pretty reliably trade KOs. Which is really all you want out of like a 9-point mon is the ability to trade KOs.
Yeah, so like it's not
suited for that.
It's not worthless. There are points where you're going to draft in. That's why it's 9 points. But I mean, if you're looking for like a breaker, you just get the Big Brother version.
Yep.
Okay. Next we have Hisuian Lilligant, and this has the abilities Chlorophyll, Hustle, Leaf Guard, and its typing is Grass and Fighting. I'm really excited about this mon.
I am too. I think it's a really great stat distribution for the amount of stats it had to work with.
Yeah, so like this speed 105, attack 105.
Nothing else matters.
No. Hustle's a neat ability. If you're a good trainer, you won't miss.
Yep.
It's great.
You got Aerial Ace, so you have confirmed hitting ability with Hustle.
Yeah. You can throw a band on it, Scarf. You can throw a Life Orb on it if you're really brave. The only thing this mod's really missing is U-turn, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Which maybe it'll get
I
it
think-
later, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Because normal Lilligant doesn't have it, so
It would really give it a, because it's kind of sitting at the same level as Durant. It's much more draftable than Durant because Durant's a bad steel type, and that's hard to build around with a bad steel type.
yes.
Whereas Lilligant's much more usable, weak offense or weak defensive typings in grass and fighting. You don't need those to be bulky, and so it's able to kind of go in there and slot into teams, I think, a lot better. It has a very exciting speed tier. 105 is really nice to have, and you don't need to run hustle every match, but opponents are going to have an awful time making sure they're able to answer hustle in a lot of matchups. So you can really condense prep and create a lot of situations where there's designated switch-ins for Lilligant, which is abusable.
Yes.
So you can start running things like not poison powder, stun spore or sleep powder to hit some of the obvious switch-ins when they switch in and try to get them.
Yeah,
and abuse with that.
And it's a good status spreader. There's a lot of unique ways, or not unique so much as there's a lot of creative ways you can run it. And
Yep.
I'm pretty excited about this mon. It's much better than the other.
I think when it gets U-turn, it's going to be really, really scary if it ever gets U-turn.
Yeah. All right, coming up next we have Hisuian Zoroark with 1 ability illusion. This is a normal ghost type, and this mon is one I am looking forward to seeing once it gets a nice normal stab like Hyper Voice or something.
Yeah.
That's the one downfall right now. It's a Zoroark, so it has a great move pool. Minus the one, I think its normal stab is Swift.
Swift is its best normal
Special.
It has Slash as a physical, but you're not running physical Zoroark. You don't really have any reason to, in my opinion.
No,
at the moment, physical Zoroark.
Slash Shadow Claw.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's 10 points because it's gonna do damage. It's gonna hurt. It has a ton of move pool like Flamethrower, Dark Ball, Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb. It can hit. Nasty Plot.
Yep.
So it has to be respected. If you see it on the enemy team, it's got a good speed tier, good special attack, and you're gonna, it's Zoroark.
It's a
so
really annoying. Yeah.
It's
a. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying we're long past the days of Z move openers with illusions. So, but I don't know. Zoroark's one of those mons where your mileage is going to vary depending on how the other person plays around the potential of a Zoroark. So, it's tough for me to really say. Its stats
it's going to be
alone,
very coach dependent.
Yeah, its stats alone deserve 10 points. With Hyper Voice, maybe it goes up to 12 or something. It doesn't change too dramatically, but it would be nice to be able to spam something other than Shadow Ball. But Shadow Ball is nice to spam.
Yeah, and I think this is really and I think this is going to be an improvement upon Zoroark as we get more stabilized in the draft meta, just because the issue that regular Zoroark always faces is that it's a dark type, and it's a really fragile dark type, which is really difficult for teams to build around having a fragile dark type. It just puts a lot of pressure on other pieces, especially the normal types, to handle that. Whereas Hisuian is 2 typings that you can function with being more fragile.
Yeah.
Ghost isn't always a required type to draft at all. Normal, you can pivot around that, work around that. You can even pick up a late round Porygon if you wanted a kind of a bulky normal still to play with. So it's manageable getting a more fragile normal type. And Illusion is just such a scary ability with that type combination. It has 3 immunities and a helpful resist and
yeah, and that's all ghost types that are fragile. If you play around it correctly, it gives them the added bulk or way to get in. I know some people are fearless with Blacephalon. They're this is an easy close combat. All right, come on in, Blacephalon, and it's if this was a knockoff, well, it'd do about 300 damage to you. So, I'm glad you made the right prediction there. So
yeah.
Some people are going to be really able to abuse the typing, I feel, and those 3 immunities.
Yeah, I think it has a high ceiling for sure. It's just going to be very dependent on the coach to draft an effective team around it to take advantage of that ability, because that's where this is going to shine the most. If the team is really enabled to bait out, close combats or shadow balls or returns or something like that to really capitalize on Zoroark's ability to switch in on those attacks and abuse.
Yeah. Alright, let's keep it moving. Next we have Hisuian Goodra. Oh man, this sprite looks so sad.
I know. There's a couple sad sprites coming in.
I know. It's a Steel Dragon. It has the ability Sap Sipper, Overcoat Gooey, same as normal Goodra. I like it, honestly.
Yes.
I feel like the more and more I think about it, like it's really gonna carve its own niche away from normal Goodra, just because of the typing. Sap Sipper's a little silly with it, considering it's already ×4 grass.
I mean, you run Sap Sipper over Overcoat just because you still get the Spore immunity with Sap Sipper. So like you use Sap Sipper technically. It's super unnecessary considering you quad resist grass as it is. So unless you're really trying to counter Spore, it just doesn't have a lot of utility.
Yeah, Gooey's always interesting and fun to run. It's a little harder, in my opinion, to run it with the Goodra, just because the base 80 down to base 60, that's tough. Like, even after -1, there's a chance you don't actually outrun the thing anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for keeping some sweepers in check so they can't take off and start, physical sweepers that have to make contact moves. They can't just go into sweep mode on those contact moves. The GUI keeps it in check a little bit, but you don't get the same utility where you're now outspeeding the thing that you've slowed down because, like you said, it's got a 60 speed tier now.
Yeah, but having said that, other parts aside, it has the same Giga move pool that normal Goodra has. It's missing a reliable like flash cannon. Other than that, like it's still fine. Like you get a Sap Sipper boost. Iron Head's gonna do a ton of damage. Like you can
gonna
pressure
get
fairies.
scarier as once this gets integration with other games, it's gonna be even scarier because again, we talked about this with Hisuian Slugoo. The Goodra shares the Gumi, so like the Hisuian and the regular Goodras both share the same Gumi, so that means all of the moves Gumi can learn can be passed forward onto these kind of Pokemon. So this will see Toxic one day, this will see Infestation I think one day, so it has some coverage utility moves coming into play, which makes it really, really difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and its stats kind of shore up the issue we have with Duraludon, where Duraludon's like a not so bulky dragon steel and it sucks. Hisuian Goodra has the stats to back it up. Like Steel Dragon isn't a bad typing in a vacuum. It's just a bad typing when you can't take a hit. Like is it Dialga? Is it Dialga that's the it's
Dialga's the other one, yeah.
Like that's a great mod. It's done well in Ubers forever. So it's not the typing. It's just Duraludon's a bad mod.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be like really interesting as like normally you don't ever consider dragons counters to fairy, but this I think can really shine in that role just because most fairy attacks are Moonblast. And so with that 150 special defense stat plus an AV, this just eats hits all day.
Yeah, it's going to take like 25% from a spec Sylveon,
Yep. It doesn't care.
Cool.
It just sits there.
Great.
And it has Iron Head and Sludge Bomb, so it has mixed attacks to work with. So if it's like a specially defensive fairy, who cares? Just slap it with Iron Head. If it's got good physical defense, okay, you got Sludge Bomb. Like, you can just smack it around. Or if it has a good typing combination the fairy does, you probably have the right coverage move to still hit it for super effective
so
damage.
I like it. I think it's going to see play. Yeah, you're going to hear that a lot. I just like these mods coming up.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at what's coming up next. We have Ursaluna, everyone's favorite, honestly. This is my favorite new mod. Guts, bulletproof, unnerve. Kind of silly that like the hidden ability is just stupid.
Yeah, it's okay. It has 2 good abilities. It doesn't even need a 3rd ability.
No.
Because bulletproof. As I said, the nice thing with bulletproof that people won't notice as much is that bulletproof gives it protection from both Focus Blast and Aura Sphere. So special fighting types don't really have a good matchup against Ursaluna, which is very, very fun to see.
Yeah. But I mean, one day it's gonna get the right moves to really abuse Guts. Just wait till it gets Facade.
Yeah.
Oh man, and this thing's giga tanky. Like 130, 105, 80 in terms of defensive spread. Ooh man, this is spooky. It has rest to bulk up. Its best normal stab right now is double edge because I don't think body slams in PLA.
No, I mean it has slash, but slash isn't that
That's
great
base
damage
70.
output.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I just run double edge and like
You have the
get
HP
the
stats
hit.
to not care about the double edge recoil.
It has
I
pretty
mean, that
good
130
coverage and
HP
all the
protects.
different punches, rock slide. Like it's got coverage. High horsepowers. It's only ground stab right now. It doesn't have earthquake.
But high horsepower is basically the same as Earthquake. I mean, you're gonna miss every now and again, but that
The
5%
big difference,
isn't gonna make it break a lot of games.
yeah, the big difference may come up in that it's a contact move, so that's 17% if it's a Rocky Helm. But I don't know, that feels so bad to switch that in because if you like, cool, I don't know, it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
But
I mean, this thing just eats walls though. Like Ferrothorn gets obliterated by Fire Punch. You know, Toxapex is getting obliterated by high horsepower.
yeah.
So there's not a lot of things switching in happily on this.
No, it has
just
player
that great
like it has
potential.
player off like normal Ursula Ring like and if it gets Ursa Ring's move pool too, you know, then it's gonna start picking up like the seed bomb.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Oh, God.
this thing's gonna be a menace in draft.
Yep.
Like
And if you're playing matchups too where status is going to get thrown around a lot, you can see a bunch of Will-O-Wisps or Toxics coming out. You can always end up running AV sets too, which is just super scary because you'll just eat the Toxic or the Will-O-Wisp at some point, not care because you have guts, and then still be super bulky. Because
one of my favorite sets on Guts Mons, if you know they're gonna be a little laissez-faire with things, either with T-Spikes or Willow Spam, is just put a band on it. So then you come in and
oh my god,
something's dying. Like you may only trade one for one, but like you know, I've seen it with an Ursa Ring before that came in on T-Spikes and just got off the hit, and it was like, oh,
yeah.
cool.
There's no switch-ins to a 130 or 140 attack stat with band, with guts, and clicking facade. Like that's gone.
Like,
I don't
resisted
care what
minus 80.
Yeah, it's gone. So that there's a lot of wall breaking. The tiering I think really reflects how similar in role it is to Conkeldurr. I mean, Conkeldurr has the benefit of Mach Punch right now and a couple of utility things like Defog and Toxic.
Yeah,
but
this just needs
has that same wall breaking potential, which is super scary.
Yeah, this needs quick attack, and then we're in business.
Yeah, then it's potent.
Yeah, but I think he's gonna be paired with Conkeldurr in terms of like they're gonna live right at the same tier, or maybe only one away from each other. They're essentially the same mon with different typing. You're right.
Yep. So I see this doing well, and it could even improve, especially if it gets certain pieces of coverage going forward.
All right, next we have Sneasler with the abilities Pressure and Poison Touch. This is a cool mon. So instead of Weavile, we have Sneasler and attack 130, speed 120. So it's a little slower.
5 out of the speed. Yeah, took 5 away from speed, gave it to attack.
Totally fine. Great. This is fighting and poison, right? So it has poison jab. I'm looking forward to when it eventually gets triple axle with poison touch. I mean,
would be nasty.
It's kind of a moot point because it's probably a pretty similar proc chance. It's just poison jab with poison touch. But you know, it's got sword stance. It has close combat, which is much better than low kick. This mon has some real potential. Like, it's scary.
It has the right coverage
tier.
too. It gets Shadow Claw for Ghosts, X Scissor for Psychics, which are really critical to have those kind of coverage moves to hit those.
Yeah, and I mean, technically it has quick attack for some priority. Like, you can just click Sword Stance and then run to town. Like, there's always a thing. Like, close combat is a busted move. Superpower is balanced in that every time you use it, you know, you lose some attack. Close combat, if you're a fast mon, who cares?
Who cares? You just keep clicking close combat.
Yeah, like that's like I have some, you know, sets from or some replays that it's close combat and it's like at the end of the match I'm like 0.33 in both of my defenses and it's like, who cares?
Doesn't matter. Had no impact on the game because you were just outspeeding everything.
Yes, so I'm really looking forward to this mon. It's one of the more straightforward mons I feel to use. Like there's no attack or that. You just get it in, you click a move, and you're either gonna poison it or you're gonna sweep at the end of the game. It's like Weavile, right?
Yeah, that poison touch is really huge for its viability too, because you know steals can't switch it on this, so unless you know, the one thing that really beats this right now is a bulky poison. Like, it doesn't have an answer for like a Toxapex or a Crobat that can outspeed it. It doesn't have a way to beat those kind of mons. But if the team lacks those, and teams often lack bulky poisons, that's not
there's
a core draft piece that people build with.
Like,
it can just decimate because
so...
the switch-ins have risk of being poisoned. So like, maybe you have a Tornadus that can kind of switch in on it, but if Tornadus is eating close combat and then getting poisoned afterwards, Tornadus isn't having a fun time.
Yeah,
so
we're
just pressures.
Where's your Garbodor? Let's go.
Yeah. I like this one. I think it has a lot of potential, and it's going to be very difficult to play around.
Yes, I agree. All right, let's move on. Coming up next is Enamorus-Incarnate, and this is the last mon with the abilities Healer and Contrary. Doesn't have a great way to use Contrary yet.
Has no way to use Contrary right now.
But we'll see. It may pick up Hammer Arm, which seems to be a staple, or even Superpower. Some of the genies do have Superpower, so we'll see if they can make use of that. Good stat spread. Could be a mixed attacker. Once they're on special, it has Moonblast, it has Calm Mind, Mystical Fire, it's Earth Power.
Power, Sludge Bomb. There is no good switch-ins for this that aren't like the fattest special walls. We're talking like Chansey Blissey levels of special wall here.
Yeah.
You're basically like, if I don't have a good special normal, I don't have a switch-in to Enamorus. And Enamorus can still click Calm Mind on those predicts, and then
you will outpace
that great of answers anymore. Yeah. And that 106 is so good of a speed tier because there's a lot of things it just barely creeps past that hate this. Like Zarude is miserable about this outspeeding it by 1 point. Mienshao hates it that it gets outsped by 1 point. I mean, that 106, and I think it's the first 106 speed tier, so it's just a really difficult speed tier for opponents to play around because it forces a lot of things into scarfs or just getting outpaced and one hit KO'd by this because they don't have the bulk to take a 135 stab Moonblast for super effective damage.
Moonblast, what a move. Just like, oh man. So this is a great mon. It's gonna go early, as it should. It's a great genie, and it kind of looks at some of its brothers and say, well, you can't just do this on your own, idiots.
Yeah, I see this pairing very well with things like, Lickitung, Audino, or, Blissey, just kind of a team that needs because this takes the fairy slot most likely, and so that leaves you without a cleric, so maybe you start looking at those with some of those mons, or maybe like a Vaporeon.
It's always nice to take, and it's always nice to take one of those checks out of the pool for your mon. It's why, the obvious ones would be like, when you draft a Rillaboom, you take Zapdos, because Zapdos is your biggest check, or it's one of those things. This is a little less obvious, but that's okay. Even if you don't get those mons, it's gonna do just fine on its own. It can slot into just about any team, and it has decent bulk. Like, you're not gonna run it as a wall, but it can switch into attacks okay if it's resistant.
It has a pretty easy time running boots. Like, I think it has an okay solid time running boots, not being bothered by that. It has enough. 135 is a lot of attack power to work with, and you can still boost it up with Calm Mind with that issue.
Yeah, I'd almost consider Scarf first just because of the speed tier, but then my thought process is for a mon like this would be Scarf, if not Scarf, Boots, if not Boots, Specs, and then I can start getting spicy. Like, there's no reason to get too crazy with a mon like this. Its stats and move pool will carry it just fine.
Oh, absolutely. And it's going to get even scarier when it gets access to Substitute down the road. Because, the benefit at the moment is that it can't hide behind anything, so you have that to work with. But eventually it's going to get that too, and it's going to be extra potent. I think this is just going to be sitting very close to Landorus-Incarnate. Landorus-Incarnate probably still has the edge, but this is going to be really difficult to deal with.
I think Lando T just outpaces it just a little bit damage-wise. I'd have to really check the calcs because its special attack isn't as high. But
it's a 115, but it's got the sheer force.
Yeah,
and that combination.
And that just is giga high. But that's all I really have to say about Enamorus. So that brings us to
great potential.
Yeah, that brings us to the end of our tiering. We are really hoping to use these mons. We have less than 2 weeks to go, so hop into our Discord. We'll keep you up to date with any and all happenings in regards to how these mods will be integrated into the league. You got any last minute plugs?
No, I mean, just come hop into the server, come chat with us, and watch some of our old content. We're gonna have lots of different draft and draft related content going forward. So if you're in the league, expect to see, recap videos, power rankings, things like that. If you just kind of want to hang out in a draft server, we're going to be doing some videos discussing some low tier mons and their viability. Obviously, being what we are, we already did one with Pyukumuku, but we have others in the works coming out, in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Keep that series going up. So there's lots of draft content coming this way. We're really aiming to be a server that has lots going on, not just for the people participating in the league, but everyone hanging out as well. So if you're just looking for a place like that, we would really recommend stopping in.
Yeah, so that's all we have. Thank you all for watching. I guess hit that like button, subscribe, all that nonsense that videos that have to say.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Geo. Once again, with me is
P McGee.
and we will catch you all next week.